Hello, this video is my first real video on YouTube, and it's been a long time in the making. I basically wanted to make a video that documents my experience on psilocybe cubensis, or what is known as magic mushrooms. I was hoping that maybe someone on YouTube can share their experiences with me, or I don't know. My experience seems somewhat unique, and I've did enough research to basically realize that not a lot of people have had a mushroom experience like the one I've had. So, well, here goes. I took 5 grams, actually 6, which is considered to be a heroic dose or a shamanic dose, in 2012. Um, it took me years to find it. I could not really get my hands on that quantity till a friend of mine helped me out. And I did a lot of research on it. I studied it for a very long time, years even, uh, and then years looking for it. Again, in sufficient quantity. I finally got my hands on some, and that was at about, I think, November of 2012, maybe a little earlier than that. Might have been August or September. I really don't remember, but it was around that time. And the this entheogen, uh, I took it in a very shamanic, organized, specific, respectful way, not to get high, not to simply have a hallucinogenic experience. Not a very good word on, mind you, it's not what it is. But to have a shamanic experience, to see if I can truly have a spiritual experience with psilocybin cubensis, and boy did I! It took me a long time. It's 2015. Okay, it took me a long time to process that one experience. I don't know why people look at it like it's a regular drug. It's not. First of all, it's a plant. It's a myconid, really. And it basically just elevates your consciousness temporarily and allows you to experience basically different dimensions and within. It's kind of an inner scape. It's more like, instead of exploring space, you're exploring your inner space, uh, your levels of your consciousness. It's very hard to explain. It's one of the reasons why it took me so long to even make this video, is because it's very, very difficult to articulate just what it is that you're experiencing. So again, it took me years. I hope I do it justice. I even have a little bit of a Word document here just to remind me of some of the things. Surprisingly, when I made this document about a year and a half ago, I managed to remember, I would say, 95% of the experience, which is not, from what I understand, easy. But it was so powerful. It's very hard to forget. So I basically did what, I followed the instructions that Terence McKenna gave me. He always says the same thing: you've got to measure the dose. Measure the dose. And he's correct. You have to. You have to take at least 5 grams, dried. It's different with when it's not dried. It's because of the water weight. I don't remember exactly how much it is, but 5 dried grams. And then you have to do it in an environment that's conducive to the experience. You can't do it with friends. You can't do it with, distractions, the computer, the television. This is a very serious thing. You have to treat it like it's literally a spiritual, religious ritual. You have to treat it that way, like you're about to go talk to God. And it's not far from the truth. So, moving on, I prepared a bowl of wheat. It's a good thing to have around, because in the beginning, when you take it, you might get an anxiety attack. Not an attack in the sense of like, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. I'm just saying, like, you will get anxious. You will feel it coming on. And it's not just like I'm feeling the effect of a drug coming on. It's like I'm feeling a presence coming on. So I took the mushrooms. They were grown from a syringe, so they didn't have any bad taste, unlike the ones you might find in cow patties. And then after about 40, 50 minutes, I don't really remember, I began to feel the onset. Um, it's hard to explain what that onset is. It's just like a tingling, anxiety in your chest, like something's coming. It's kind of like being, about to walk into an office for a very important job interview. It's really weird. So it's this anticipation, this tingling. And then I began to hear sounds coming from my wall, and it sounded like old hot water pipes heating up. And I don't think our apartment had that. Maybe it did, I don't know. Either way, I've never heard it before. And it reminded me of something Terence McKenna said about the elves coming and knocking. And when the elves come and knocking, you have a choice. You can either accept it and go into the experience, or you can reject it. And I, of course, I said I was ready. Now, to clarify, I did have all the lights off. It was total darkness. I had no music on. It was late at night. I made sure everybody was asleep. There was nobody that could call me. I had my phone shut off. There was nobody that could knock on my door. Nothing. So it was really good timing. I did it very well. I didn't have any interruptions. So I did feel that anxiety coming on, and then I even got like a little bit of fear, you know, not fear of anything bad, just the unknown. I had never done this before, and particularly at such a high dose. So I went to my closet in the dark. I managed to stumble my way to the closet and dig out my pipe, and I took like one or two bowl hits, and that calmed me down. I laid back down on my bed again, and I laid there in the darkness, and then I began to what I would call dive. You're basically diving inward. I just remember bits and pieces about the dive. It was like diving through like levels of my or of layers of my own mind. I don't know how to really explain that. There are many levels of your mind, of your consciousness. Uh, what I do recall is it was very brief. I don't know how long it was. I just remember that it was brief, and I was going through levels of my own personal fears, of possibilities and possible realities, and it was all rolled up in one. I don't, time really has very little meaning when you are having an experience like this. Um, so I would briefly consider said fear, experience said fear, and move on. I think what I do recall is that I went through this very fast. Maybe somebody else might take a long time. They might have a lot of fears to go through. I went through mine really fast. Like I just plowed right through it, through that part of the experience, through the dive. Um, so, like for an example, I would suddenly experience the fear and possibility that what I was doing was wrong, that there were evil entities in the room with me. Perhaps I'd taken too much and I was going to have a heart attack, or it would make me vulnerable to possession if my, spirit left my body astrally or something. I mean, all these different fears, demonic beings, aliens, etc. Uh, and And so I do remember at one point I did say into the darkness, as if I was speaking to somebody, that I was here with love and respect and I was seeking wisdom, and that I did not want to be taken advantage of. Um, so what I experienced was like a series of tests or trials. Again, I can't recall them clearly. I don't know how long it lasted, but I do recall that I basically passed, with flying colors rather quickly. I do know that much. Um, and in days after, I remember looking back at that part of the experience and saying, man, was I ready? I flew right through that part. Um, there is little else I can say about the dive because it's a very transient experience. It's basically the inner scape of your mind. What it does remind me of is of Buddha during his trials. When he meditated, he would hit higher and higher levels, and he would have to face his own personal fears to reach higher levels, to basically go through doors. And if I recall, he had to face Mara. Mara was an archetype of his ego, basically fear, or what we would call evil, or what psychologists call the ego, and what religious people call the devil. Now, what I can say is it taught me about myself and my tenuous connection to this world, um, about my spiritual readiness, and how the prison bars of this reality are constructed out of fear. Um, Now, the next part of the experience is what I call communion. I went through the dive and now I'm in communion. Now I am basically uh, in the meat of the experience. Now, Terence McKenna said that the mushroom is, out of all the psychedelics, LSD, ayahuasca, DMT, etc., that the mushroom is the only one that has an actual voice. It will talk to you. He even says it that way. Okay, I'm here. And it will respond. Me too. What do I do? And it'll respond, whatever you want. Now, I didn't exactly have that particular experience as far as a voice is concerned. What I experienced were various aspects of myself. Now, this is very difficult to explain. This cost me a lot of effort to explain this, at least to put it down in my Word document. And it's going to cost me to explain it here, but luckily I do have it in front of me. It's helping me out, because again, it's very difficult to explain your perspective from, say, 6 different perspectives of yourself, if that makes any sense. Now, the 6 perspectives that I experienced, there were probably more, but I can't remember all of them. The first one is as a patient in a hospital waking up from a coma. The second one is as a virtual reality gamer, having realized that he was playing a video game called life. The third one is me actually lying on the bed. I would consider the person talking to you right now, the observer. The fourth one was the inner me. That is the soul, I would imagine. The fifth one would be the mother, mom, Gaia. And the sixth one perspective is as everyone, which is very difficult to explain. I have to stress that as I go through various perspectives that I experienced, it all happened in a sense simultaneously, all at once. I, me, he, she, it, us, them, you, we. These terms are useless in describing an experience, a psychedelic experience where you're basically transcending perspectives, when you're experiencing the one consciousness, that you are one. This is the common thing, the common theme all psychedelics have. If you learn nothing else from a psychedelic experience, you will learn one thing, and that is that we are all one. And it won't be an intellectual concept. You will absolutely understand what that means. And it's not being taught to you. You're simply remembering it. You're actually thinking with your heart, not your brain. People say that we have one mind, one brain. It's not true. We have several. Science says we have 2. We have a brain in our head, and we have a brain in our stomach. People who study religion, spirituality, consciousness say we have more than that. And the one big one, the one that's usually ignored, is the heart. It's not just a muscle that pumps blood. So I'm going to refer to the perspectives I mentioned earlier, the 6 perspectives, by their names to avoid pronoun confusion. Now, this lasted for about 3 to 4 hours, maybe 5 at maximum. The dialogue I had between me and the entities was partially one-sided, and I use the word entities loosely. Okay, entities to me sounds almost scary, like you're inviting entities. It's really not like that. When you're in this experience and you're talking to these others, you realize you're talking to aspects of yourself, old friends. These are entities that you've known before you were ever born. Very hard to explain. So the dialogue I had between me and the entities was partially one-sided. Okay, it's partially one-sided because I could not discern anything other than a strange sound that emanated from the speakers. Me lying on the bed, the perspective of me lying on the bed, was listening to the inner me's response, the soul's response, and that's how I was able to discern the dialogue or even record it. To reiterate, I would view myself laying on the bed from a side perspective, and I could view myself laying on the bed, responding to these voices, these entities, these spirits, these other me's, and just by listening to my responses, I was able to kind of discern a dialogue, because all I could hear was my responses and the weird sounds that came from the entities. Uh, so it should be noted that the only voice or the only entity that was comprehensible to all perspectives, all six perspectives, including me lying on the bed, the soul, or sorry, just the regular old me, the one that's talking right now, was mother, was the perspective of mother, Gaia, mom. She also produced no words in my mind or verbally. It was more feeling. It was like talking with feelings. It was really weird. I'm still not quite sure how I understood her. I think maybe it was heart language. I don't know. Since truth is its own language, so I guess that was probably how it was. Now, I'm going to go through the perspective so you understand what I mean as the patient, the video gamer. The patient was me lying in a bed in a hospital, surrounded by friends and family. There was a doctor and a nurse, or another doctor, and I was hooked up to all sorts of stabilizing medical equipment. Everything was fuzzy and glowing. Now, this is all happening in my head. It's not like it's manifesting in the room with me, but it was manifesting in my head. Remember, I'm in various perspectives simultaneously. So everything was fuzzy and glowing. It was a very like soft, white, glowing, like you see in the movies, where everything's like airbrushed looking and white because it was all medical in the hospital room. I could never make out faces with distinct detail, but everyone greeted me with such joy and enthusiasm, and they proceeded to talk to me all at once. I remember my mother, quote unquote, was to my immediate right. There was this group in the middle of the crowd in front of my hospital bed, which would be considered my close friends, whatever that means. To my far left was what I perceived as dad or father, which is a very distant figure, mind you. Wasn't very involved. Was there, wasn't mad, I felt love, but it was very distant, very oddly distant. They told me that I was in a coma for a great many years, and they had developed a drug or a medicine that would allow me to come out of the coma for a brief period of time. The doctor said that this drug had been used before, but I would not remember the last time I was able to speak with my friends and family, and I was told that I would not be able to remember after this time as well. It would be like coming out and being a new experience for me every time. Kind of like that illness that some people have where they have a weird memory dysfunction where they can only remember so much information, maybe daily, and that's it, one day at a time. I, of course, proceeded to enjoy and savor every minute. Look at the analogies here to our life. Enjoy and savor every minute of this moment. There were some details told to me about my sickness and the condition which it left me, and how I was living another life in my mind that wasn't real, and that I could only wake up for a short time in the real world. However, I have acknowledged this during the experience because I knew it was just a simple representation that allowed my mind to understand, but knowing that I wasn't really a patient, that wasn't really in a hospital, and I wasn't being shown all these things. It was just an expression. It was something so that my brain could understand what was trying to be explained to me, what was being explained to me. It was synonymous with my real experience. It was a quasi-real illusion, and even during the experience, I knew that. So it wasn't like I was immersed in some illusion that I thought was real. I knew that it wasn't real. I knew that it was just an example. But it was still quasi-real. There was, the love I felt from my mother and my friends was quite real. It was incredible. The love for my father was distant and reserved, like I mentioned earlier. He spoke little, if at all. My mother, on the other hand, was in tears of love and joy and sadness and compassion and understanding. I could feel all of this as if I were her feeling for me on the bed. This is when I said earlier I was also mother, one of those perspectives. Every time mother was involved, I was simultaneously her. And this is how I could feel that love. It was the most powerful love, or frankly, emotion I had ever experienced in my life. Uh, I realized, not only just during this experience, but through the whole thing, my eyes were constantly streaming with tears. I mean, the whole time. I think my pillow must have been soaked a couple hours later. It was ridiculous. I think I was dehydrated after. It wasn't like I was crying like, wah, wah. It was just that it was so incredibly powerful and beautiful. And it was just like, I didn't know. I didn't realize. And it was just, it was ridiculous. It was just like, I think really did dehydrate my eyes for like a day or two after that. Um, and then suddenly I was her and she was me and I was all of them. And I felt these waves of love and compassion. It literally rocked my body. It was crazy. I'm telling you, my pillow was soaked. It was really powerful. I really wish I could express it better in words. It just doesn't. You just can't. You either have to make a movie, or or explain it as best as you can, or have the experience yourself. So I spoke to mom for some reason. I said, "How much longer? It's so hard." My voice actually broke, and felt so emotional. And soon she said, she promised me, she's like, soon. And I just repeated so hard. This reminded me of something later on in retrospect. It was like reminding me of Jesus when he was like, I don't want to drink from this cup. I don't want to drink this bitter cup. Again, realize the analogies. There's a lot of them. You don't have to be religious, you don't have to be a Christian, but there's a lot of wisdom in all religions. And so these analogies can be very powerful if you really observe them properly. So then the scenario of the hospital was gone, and I was me lying in my bed again. Okay? And I looked at the wall to my right next to my head, where mom was, and I saw a glow. Now this is the only quote unquote real physical manifestation in my bedroom, in the dark, me laying on the bed, saw. That was everything else was in my mind. It was happening in the innerscape of my consciousness. But this glow, this ball of light, it was a small, like about this big. It was a delicate ball of light. It was the size of a soccer ball, maybe? Maybe a little bit, maybe like this. I don't play soccer. And it had no distinct edges. It was just glow. It was a glow. It was a soft, warm, golden glow. It was the only visual experience I had. It's like everything else, again, was in my head. And it pulsed with love, and I felt it emanate through me, and I gasped. I was like, Mom, I never knew. And I cried even harder, if that was even possible. I never knew you loved me so much. I didn't even know that it was possible that anything could love anyone else. I'm not a mother, and I never had a child, so, and then I can't imagine it at that level on top of it. So it was just like, it changed my life. Just that one moment, not to mention the rest of the experience. So after this scenario begins the dialogue with the inner me. Now, we have the virtual reality gamer perspective. This perspective was quick and faded faster than the others. Again, these things are happening simultaneously. I can't explain how that is. And it happened prior to the hospital scene. I was removing a helmet of some sort, some kind of tech helmet, off my head, and to look around and see myself surrounded by friends who were excited. And I had this impression of, hey, how was it? And a sense of awe, as if I did something heroic or incredible. And I cut them off by stating in disbelief that it, like wait, that wasn't real? Wait, that was just a virtual reality type game? That wasn't real? I couldn't believe it. And they were like, wow, I can't believe it. That's incredible. Like I was some kind of hero. It was really weird. I was awed and overcome by the realization that I wasn't who I thought I was, that I was home, and that I was in some virtual reality simulator, and now I'm home. Yeah, it was really funny. I have to acknowledge this as well during the experience because, again, I knew that it was a simple representation that allowed my mind to understand what was going on. I knew that that was also an illusion, but it was a quasi-real illusion. So those are two perspectives, or three total. You have mom, when she appeared, and how I was her and she was me. You have me lying in the hospital bed, so the patient. And then you have this virtual gamer perspective. So there's me lying on the bed, person that's talking to you right now. And this is me obviously lying in my bed in the dark, having a mushroom trip. The me I experience every day in the real world. I was able to observe and listen to the responses of the inner me and bring back knowledge and some dialogue in this primary perspective. Very difficult, but I managed to write all this down and years later still be able to express it and explain exactly how it happened. It should be noted that the only hallucination, again, or a visual that I had, aside from the scenarios, was Mother, the glowing ball, next to me, floating on my bed, next to my bedroom wall, talking to me. There's more dialogue with her throughout the experience. Again, this isn't linear. Very difficult to explain. I can't express this enough. But it was the only visual I had. It was Mother talking to me as a glowing ball of light next to my head. The other perspective, the inner me, the part of me that was able to dialogue with the entities. Unfortunately, I was not able to hear through this perspective as it was awakened. It was the awakened inner me. It functioned separately than my brain did. I can't explain that. It was the real me, not the one in front of you, although it seems like the real me, but it's the soul. It's our soul. It was my soul. And that dialogue, all I could do was gauge my reactions and my answers and my responses, but I couldn't really hear them talking. It sounded like, when they talked, it sounded like wah, 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 wah. It sounded like Snoopy cartoon, and when they're on the phone and the adults are on the phone, and you just hear that wah, 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 wah. That's what it sounded like. So I couldn't, other than mom, when mom talked, which was all heart language, and I just knew, and it was different. It was just a dialogue that I couldn't understand. So the dialogue with the inner me reflects a perspective in the hospital bed, including the relative location of my friends and family in relation to my bed, but happened mostly after the hospital scenario. During this perspective, I am at the left side of my body, right side of my body, observing myself, listening to my responses in the bedroom in the dark. So an example of some of the dialogue I had, and it took me a long time to be able to write this down and much less put it on YouTube, because this is very personal, and for a long time I couldn't even talk about it without wanting to break into tears. It was that powerful an experience. So I said, what? How is that possible? I can't believe it. My inner self said. Okay, this is my inner self saying that. What? How is this possible? I can't believe it. The voices continued their dialogue, that strange, comical, Snoopy, adult sound, the wah, 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 wah. I can't, it's so funny. And I remember me going, I'm what? And my facial expression is all dumbfounded. Mind you, this is in the dark, and I can see myself laying there having this experience. For some reason, royalty came to mind through the inner self. It didn't say this. It didn't say I was royal. It just came to mind. I had like my own little thoughts while I'm observing this as me lying on the bed. And I'm reminded of David Icke, who gets made fun of a lot. He stated he was the son of God after being obliterated for it by character assassination. He stated he was a son of God. He had a Kundalini experience in Peru. Literally had, as he put it, the top of his head blown off as the Kundalini energy snake went through all his chakras and basically gave him a premature awakening. So, excuse me, I have people trying to talk to me. So when he said that, I thought, that's crazy. Why would you say that? Why would you go on television and tell people that you are the son of God? But I understand why he did that. He's not saying he's Jesus. He wasn't saying he was the Son of God. And this experience actually explained to me why he would say something like that. I probably wouldn't have said that because I knew people would have misunderstood. But I guess he was still flying high when he said it. And but I understand why. It's because we all are part of God. We all are sons and daughters of God. There is no separation. It's not that I'm Jesus. It's not that I'm the Messiah. It's just that we are all part of God. So I understood that. And I remember David Icke, and I felt bad for him. I get it now. I understand why he said that. Um, so my feelings of being full of myself go away. So then I said, again, this is my soul, my inner self, and me observing that inner self. I'm what? I repeated. And here my eyes began to stream yet again. I'm telling you, I was I think crying dehydrated me for a day. And I said, for me? And at this point my voice breaks. For me? I repeated in awe. And I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude and humility. Here, even me lying in the bed understands what was being said to me. I felt this particular piece of information. Something about what is waiting for me / us. Something like paradise. Some unexplained reward. Or it defies comprehension. I really can't explain it. Something like heaven. Though these words are inadequate. And my understanding is that this is for me / all of us. We're all one consciousness. When we go back, we have this, whatever it is waiting for us, but it's super good news. And it fills my soul. I mean, I was just I felt, you know how we all have those moments where we loathe ourselves, we don't like ourselves, we even hate ourselves sometimes, we feel we don't deserve things, society judges us and we accept it, and we're like, yeah, you're right, I do suck. Imagine feeling like that and then being told that you're this special being and that what's waiting for you is beyond imagination. And not being told this intellectually. This is something that you're being told through heart language, so that you're really more remembering this than you are being, learning new information. Another thing I remember me whispering, because I sometimes would repeat what they would say to me because I was saying things in awe, like, me and what? And one of those things was, no one gets left behind. I remember that distinctly. No one gets left behind. I absolutely repeat those words verbally for several seconds and smile. I observe myself doing this. The group in the middle, again, we have the same group, mom to the right, dad to the left, friends in the middle. This is constant through most of the experience, okay? Even though I can't see them except for mom. Mom was only there for a time. Now the group in the middle they're so joyous, they're so happy, they're like my best friends, if you will. If they would be like my closest friends on the other side, or the closest friends of my I can't explain it. It's, in the somewhat higher dimensions where we are still in a somewhat separate state. We're not one thing, we're not in source, but we do exist in somewhat of a separate state, although in a much higher and happier dimension. We have friends. We have loved ones. We have people that are parts of ourselves that we stick to better. When we incarnate with people that we know, technically. That's why there's some people you feel incredible love for them, and you're instantly friends with them. It's like you've always known them. That has something to do with that. And so this group in the middle kind of represented that. They were my quote-unquote close friends. The funny thing about them is, everybody else does the wah, 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 wah thing when they speak. When this group of friends of mine speak, they sound different. Instead of the Snoopy parental drone, they make the sound of the flip tab of a soda can hitting a cement ground, or like a small coin hitting a hard cement ground, like that ping, or they just picture it in your head. Okay? And anyways, every time they did this, it reminds me of laughter. They were just so joyous. It was ridiculous. Again, my dad, the dad element, the male, was distant. The friends, joyous. You're their hero. And mom, just pure love and compassion. And so they always seem joyous when they speak, and they make me smile every time they did. And it was I wish I knew what they were saying. I guess my soul does. I, as a regular human being with a brain, I can only tell you and relate what I responded. So then my mother begins to speak to me again. And me lying on the bed wonders if this is my mother's higher self, as she's still alive, she's not dead. So, I didn't really understand at that time. And her words echo in my mind and all throughout all my perspectives. And she lets me know that I am everyone and how wonderful I am and all the wonderful people I have ever been and all the wonderful things I have ever done. Okay, again, this is heart language. You're not being told this, you're remembering this. That's why it's very different. This is why the psychedelic experience is very powerful. You're remembering old knowledge, truths. Okay? So it was a wonderful thing. But then you have this flip side. And this flip side was very powerful. She also tells me, sadly, because I'm everyone, that I'm also responsible for all the horrible atrocities and crimes committed. Since I am everyone, I have been everyone evil. And again, this is not just being told, this is remembering. When this hits me, the passing of this knowledge hits me with just so much force. This is the only time in my mushroom experience that I moved from my bed. I got off my bed, went over to my computer. I had to hold myself up against the wall. And now it wasn't just eyes streaming. This was actually me crying for real now. Sound and everything. Because it's very tough to know this. It makes sense. You're everyone. So obviously you're going to be everyone that sucks. But it's very different to remember. I can't express how powerful this was. It is one thing to understand intellectually that you are one with everything. Okay? Have lived every life and have done everything. But it's another thing when the knowledge hits the hardest truth with a capital T, as the Buddhists would say, and bearing all the consequences therein. It's a very powerful realization. So, moving on to Mother. The perspective, unlike the others, was a sporadic experience. It was most powerfully occurring during my comment on how much longer, it's so hard, and the love that she had for me. Remember that part I mentioned? Well, the suffering I seemed to indicate to Mother was simultaneously Mother indicating her suffering to me. This is where it gets a little confusing, if it's not already super confusing. This is a perspective where I am not sure if it was her or my inner self, my soul, despite that it's technically both. I also felt her love for me as her. Very hard to explain that. I felt her love for me as her. This is why I said, I never knew you loved me so much. There was a moment where I also said, in a state of tolerance, and I don't know why I said this, I'm still studying this years later, you have to let go. You have to let go. I said it with compassion. I said this in a state of love and forgiveness as Mom and as me, lying in the bed, the inner self. I don't know who this was aimed at. You're going to have to fill that in on your own. It could be whatever it is. It could be these parasitic life forms that have attached themselves to this consciousness and manipulate it right now. It could be the ego that served its purpose for thousands of years and now has to go away, or at least integrate. I mean, I don't know. I'm still working on that. I have 7 different theories on that, but it was a very distinct thing that was said, and it did not seem like it was to me. You have to let go. Well, I don't know. Like I said, I'd rather not speculate on that part because it's just too big. It's just not enough information to go on. It could be detachment. It could be, to the entities that are fucking with us. It could be to the hierarchy that has is ruining this planet, that's attaching itself to our consciousness and manipulating it to form reality to their way, hacking the matrix as they do, and it's time for them to let go. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of theories. I'll let you figure that out on your own. So then there's the last and final perspective, and that is everyone. During my experience, I was generally everyone. That was present, if only partially. I was also everyone when I was shown that I was everyone in the universe. I was various perspectives of myself. I was one with everything inside of love, or what people call the field. Love is not 5-minute hugs. Love is an actual frequency. There are only two major frequencies. It's a dual reality, fear and love. That's not some philosophical bullshit. That's a real thing. They actually have scientific research showing how love and hate affects the genome. They have done it with ice, with flash freezing ice, and how it forms specific sacred geometry. But I'm not going to deviate on that. But love is a real thing. It's a field. It's not 5-minute hugs, okay? So, continuing this communion, all these scenarios, while I have placed them in a specific order, were rather simultaneous and mixed with other perspectives that I was unable to remember. There were some divisions in the experience, such as the virtual gamer, followed by the hospital patient scenario, followed by the inner self under observation by me in the bed. Shortly after it was over, I set up and I went to my computer and sent certain messages on Facebook, and later on that day made certain phone calls. It's corny, but I had to let certain people know that I love them. I felt it was important to do. I was flying high on the truth, and I felt brave. So I did that. And then I rested my eyes, because they were like literally puffy for like a day and a half straight. It was just ridiculous. Like you're literally streaming tears the whole experience. It was just that powerful, that truthful, that beautiful, that profound. Well, anyways, that day I had to go and do some errands, and I drove around in my truck listening to music, and it seemed like every song was aimed at me. It felt as if there was no such thing as coincidences, as if everything had meaning. It seems very egotistical, but it really isn't. I mean, everything is interconnected. Well, I'm not going to deviate. So, I felt energized and positive beyond belief. Every person I encountered was beautiful. It was another me, in Lakesh. I could feel so much love for strangers. Attractive women no longer appealed to me sexually. I saw them just as beautiful beings. It was like a platonic love. I was actually surprised by that. Normally I see a hot chick walk by, I'm looking at her butt and everything else. Not that day. They were another me, a beautiful being, another expression of myself experiencing this reality. And I don't mean that like philosophically. I mean I was still riding high on what I learned. And you will. If you take a psychedelic and have a powerful experience, whether it's ayahuasca or mushrooms or whatever, you're going to remember that, and it's going to stay with you for at least a day or two. It's very sad. I had a very difficult time thinking about my experience the whole day without breaking into tears. I mean, I had to literally put it out of my head. I could not think about it because I would just start crying in front of somebody like an idiot. So I put it out of my head often. And I was really sad. I was really sad because I knew that the memories would fade. I knew they would fade. I knew that this feeling would fade. I knew that once again I would just become another half asleep program in the matrix. I knew it. I knew it was like, I'm going to forget this. It's going to suck. And that was really, really sad. It was like being in heaven and having to come back here. I can't explain it any other way. I decided not to tell anybody about my experience, at least not in detail. It was too difficult to discuss, and I did, and for a very long time. The fact that I'm putting it on Facebook now, basically bearing my soul so that people can laugh, point, and make fun. But I think it's important. I think that there are going to be some people that are going to watch this video, and they're going to say, yeah, I get that. I had a similar experience. I hope so, because I can't find anything. I went on every website that has to do with this stuff. Arrowhead, whatever, I could not find a mushroom experience that was so feminine, that was so It was more like an ayahuasca trip. It was very weird. So a week passed. I'm almost done here. A week passed, and a friend came to stay with me in Maine. She was from Wisconsin. She's a talented tarot card reader, and a friend from Skype, from Facebook. And she had brought the remaining amount of cubensis for me to take. There wasn't much left. She was the one that originally had sent it to me. Don't ask me how she sent it. I won't impart that information on YouTube. So I talked to her more or less about my overall experience. She simultaneously had done her own 5 grams the same night I did. Her experience differed wildly. She had a long, fascinating conversation with a mantid. Okay, I didn't know what the hell she was talking to when she first, told me about it those 3 years ago, an insectoid being, but research shows me she was talking to a mantid, some kind of higher dimensional being, and had many revelations, but then she got sick, and that kind of sucks. Maybe she shouldn't. She's very tiny, she's very short, and she weighs like 100 pounds. So 5 grams might have been too much for her. So if you're a 100-pound woman, by the way, you might want to lower it to 4. Okay, just incidentally, I didn't puke. Most people puke. I took a heroic dose of 6 grams. I didn't puke at all. That actually surprised the hell out of me. I did not have a single puking, or I did not get sick at all. Anyway, she had told me prior to all this, through her abilities, that I had a powerful female energy protecting me. So my experience with Mom did not surprise her much. I take these things with a grain of salt. I'm not 100% into tarot. I think if it does work, you have to do it for yourself, and it's too dynamic. I don't think it's very accurate, but it does have some kind of truth to it. So after taking this minuscule dosage, like 1 gram, we spoke some more. And I decided 1 gram was not going to do nothing to me, not after that epic experience I had a week earlier. And so I decided to take a walk for some air. I wanted to just go outside, look at stuff, whatever. What I didn't do earlier. This was, to me, a recreational dose. 1 gram a week later. Come on, it's nothing. It was a short walk, I'll tell you, because I made it only 15 feet from my apartment building. And then I stared at this tree across the street. It was about 9 at night. There were a fair amount of folks walking around, and the tree, for some reason, caught my attention. It was in front of a library, and the trunk was surrounded by a fence. It's probably about 20 feet tall. It's rather unextraordinary. And I was far from tripping, mind you. I was on a low dose. It was just to finish it off, really. And yet my attention was drawn to this tree. It was a potent intuition to look at this tree. So I did. Okay, I'll look at this tree. And I began to appreciate nature and thought of Mother Earth. And then the tree began to sway from a strong breeze. And then it happened. I regarded the tree. It was just swaying there, all innocuous. And I immediately thought, Gaia. And then I went, Gaia? I was like, wait a minute. Hold on. Mom? Now, my heart literally felt like it exploded. I thought I was having a heart attack. It was such... Even during the mushroom trip, I've never had an actual realization like this. This is beyond an epiphany. Okay? This is physical feeling of realization. It was such a powerful realization that I literally felt my heart gush this tremendous amount of energy. And I had to double over, holding my chest. It wasn't painful or anything. It was just, talk about heart language. It was screaming, Mom, Mom. And my eyes, once again, immediately filled up with tears. And at the exact moment I doubled over, this tremendous wind blew down my street, swaying all the trees, and even the people that were walking around me stopped to look around, like, what the hell? They all, kind of exclaimed in surprise, like, well, what the hell? This random gale just hit our block. And they kind of, and then they walk past me, staring at me as well, because I'm like sitting all hunched over, like holding, like, oh, look, I'm having a stroke. And okay, so I straightened up and I hid my tears, and I turned around. I just headed right back inside, and I got back inside. And I related this to my friend who was, in my room waiting for me. Told her what happened. I sat on my bed, and she let me think in silence. So the energy I thought was my mom's higher self was none other than mom, was Gaia, the glowing ball of light, the a lot of things made sense. It was almost like that one little dose, that one little extra experience was kind of like necessary to click something important in place. And now I'm sure that it represented all female maternal energies, but yet it was actually mom. It was Mother Earth. I mean, I felt honored and precious. After my week with the mushroom, a series of synchronistic events led me to pack my bags and move to Colombia, South America, which I'm actually still in currently. I'm still in Colombia right now. I'll be heading back to the States actually shortly. Been here almost 3 years now. But that's another story. I'm not going to get into that. So my afterthoughts, okay. So basically several thoughts occurred to me about my experience with this new piece of information that mom was actually Gaia. So there's the part where I said that suddenly I spoke to mom and I said, how much longer? It's so hard. My voice broke from the emotion. Soon, she promised. So hard, I repeated. Mom, I never knew. I began to cry harder if that was possible. I never knew you loved me so much. I'm going through all the quotes here that I wrote down concerning mom. Then my mother begins to speak to me again. Me lying on the bed wonders if this is my mother's higher self, as she is still alive. There was a moment where I also said in a state of tolerance, you have to let go. And I said this in such a state of love and forgiveness as mom and as me, lying in the bed, as well as inner self. So, including the mother section and the quotes that I just stated, I made certain assumptions. When I felt the suffering of myself and mom, how much longer, it's so hard, and my voice broke from emotion, soon she promised so hard, I concluded that Gaia's suffering was included in this shared pleading emotion. If anyone is Jesus wishing to refuse the bitter cup that he must drink before the crucifixion, basically, the symbolic, I have to do this thing, then it must be Gaia. I mean, look at her. I mean, we're raping her, we're gutting her, and or at least we're acquiescing to it. And meanwhile, she takes it. Sure, there's an earthquake, a volcanic eruption, a storm or a tornado here and there, but, how many of these can we really say are Gaia fighting back or avenging herself? Sure doesn't fit the mother profile. How many of these are actually man-made with HARP or geoengineering or coal mining, electromagnetic, tectonic, and nuclear weapons testing, fracking, etc.? I mean, how many are simple geological reactions to human intervention or just natural cycles? Just a thought. I'm sure she wanted to get rid of us. She could. She could. There are like a bajillion ways she could immediately annihilate every single living person on this planet right now. I won't get into how many there are, but very easy. Now, if indeed it was Mother Earth in my bedroom, then I must say that it was the most powerful love I have ever experienced in my life. It was tinged with sadness and patience. Okay? I can't explain in words how much feeling that level of unconditional love changed my life, my perspective. It's as George Carlin said, these types of drugs, or psychedelics, or entheogens, or whatever you want to call them, these mind-expanding drugs are a value changer. They change your value system. You look at things differently. Certain things are no longer important after this, and some things are now more important than ever. So then my mother begins to speak to me again. My quote, me lying in the bed wonders, is this my mother's higher self? I guess she's still alive. The relationship between me and my flesh and blood mother is deep and complicated, but nevertheless, her love for me is unconditional, and I view her unconditional love as a fractal of Gaia's. I am truly honored that in this life I had a truly loving mother. Not a lot of people can say that, so I have no complications with my mother, my flesh and blood mother. Just a note on the side there. Now here, I'm unsure who this comment was directed to. Once again, I'm going to go over this you have to let go thing. As I stated prior, it may be numerous things, including a direct message to the human race, since I am everyone. Uh, as Drunvalo Melchizedek says, this disharmonic level of consciousness of 44 and 2 chromosomes will kill any planet it inhabits after a certain amount of time. When the baby is born, and the baby must be cut from the cord it must let go. This was the most enigmatic of all the comments from Mother to me. We can only ponder what that one meant. I probably will for the rest of my life. I haven't done mushrooms since, although I plan to. I definitely want more answers on that one. Um, you know, so I guess in conclusion, it's a pretty long video so far, I apologize. Certainly my experience is not unique as far as the effects of psilocybe and cubensis, but according to my research, it is rather rare and more similar to the experiences described on DMT or ayahuasca, especially ayahuasca, which is a very feminine energy or entity or entheogen or whatever you want to call it. My friend's experience with the insectoid, on the other hand, is very common to psilocybe cubensis, and particularly ayahuasca. I have to honestly say it wasn't what I expected at all. I would have expected the experience to have taken some of my expectations after years of reading and research and waiting patiently for the amount of 5 grams to become available. I'm particularly surprised that my experience was so direct, so Gaia-ish, so angelic. It was almost Christian. Not Christ on a cross, but Christ consciousness Christian. I have never heard Terence McKenna reference a psychedelic experience with the particular characteristics I witnessed, and I haven't seen him on Arrowhead, and I haven't seen them at all on Google or in videos on YouTube, anywhere really. Again, I would really appreciate any feedback on this. I also wanted to make abundantly clear to anybody that bothers to look at this video, I do not subscribe blatantly to any of the ideas expressed in my experience. I prefer Terence McKenna's sensible view to listen to what the Myconid has to say, but not to believe a word of it at face value, and instead consider it, ponder it, meditate on it, which I think I have. It's been 3 years. For example, just because the experience is filled with unimaginable truth, such as what awaits us after death, or at least after this experience, not necessarily after each death, after each incarnation. Supposedly something different happens. I won't get into that either. But I'm saying once we go back to source, once this is actually done, or how we are all one and how everything is going to be all right in the end, how it does not mean, it doesn't mean that I will cease to act, okay, and behave in a productive manner. On the contrary, it inspires me to act more, do more, consider more. It spurs me to continue my battle with my own fears, to serve those around me. It encourages me to improve and elevate every aspect of myself while not idly sitting by, waiting for the world to end. In that sense, I am most definitely not a religious person or like Love and Lighters with these Galactic Federation of Light waiting for the Calvary to come. We are the Calvary. That's the big secret. You're the Calvary. If we're waiting on anything, it's a global consciousness, an awakening. And even then, we only need a third. We do not need everybody to become aware of what's going on and start meditating in unison. It's a lot more organic than that. Finally, I hope that whoever reads this finds something of value. Whoever hears this finds something of value, or perhaps comfort in the beauty and parallel of our experiences. I am another you. That's the truth of it. And I hope that you guys leave some kind words. Putting my heart out here on YouTube is going to get my ass kicked, but I think it's worth it. Thank you.